There we go.
Hi, good morning guys. It's Corinna, the farmer's wife at Shared Legacy Farms. This is Katie Jardin, our CSA coach, and we are so glad to see you guys this morning. I'm sorry we got a little bit of a late start than we wanted to, but we are ready now, and today we are going to be teaching our tribe about one of the key elements, I think, of being successful at CSA. Not even CSA, just cooking vegetables in general, right? If you want to eat more vegetables, you want to eat better, healthier meals, I think this skill we're going to teach you today is one that you need to get better at. And what we're teaching you is the elements of a pantry, a well-stocked pantry. So it's our opinion, and also just based on the research of our CSA insiders, that it's easy to put together a simple meal without stress if you have a well-stocked pantry. And we are going to talk to you today about what that looks like, what are the elements in a well-stocked pantry, the different categories you need to have covered, so that you can pick and choose and quickly put a meal together once you kind of learn the formulas for the different types of meal templates. So we are a CSA, a organic vegetable CSA farm, and if you want to learn more about how to join our CSA membership program, we're doing a special right now for the next 30 days. There is a private Facebook group called Exploring CSA. If you want to check that out and join the group and learn about CSA, we're doing video tutorials, we're talking about how CSAs work, answering all your questions in there, doing trainings like this inside there to help you see if CSA would be a good fit for you. You can find that group at facebook.com/groups/exploringcsa. But today we're going to teach one of those things that we cover in our CSA membership program, which is how to do this pantry staples piece. We do have a freebie for you too, and we're going to ask you to stick around till the end. It's going to be our list of pantry staples. We have a nice handout of what we think all those things should be, a one-page PDF, and so if you want to download that, just watch to the end and we'll give you the link for what that is. So Katie, I'm going to turn it over to you. We're going to talk about what should be in a pantry, and then we're actually going to make a meal at the end. We're going to practice doing this in front of you, throwing together a random skillet meal using pantry staples. So here we go.
Yeah, so I guess the first thing is that everyone's pantry is going to look a little bit different as far as what you have in it. Yeah. So these are really basic guidelines, and we feel like if you have most of these things, you'll be able to sub in and out of some recipes if you have to. So whether that's something you think of yourself, like just being able to throw together a skillet meal, or looking at a recipe and saying, oh my gosh, I have most of these things, and I don't have that type of beans, but I have another type of beans that I could easily swap out. So don't think you necessarily have to have every single item on the list, but as long as you have most of the core items, you'll be able to kind of change things if you have to.
Yeah, so, a lot of this is just substitutions sometimes.
Yeah, substitutions. The other great thing is this is like pantry, like non-perishables. So you don't have to use it that week. If you're like, I'm buying tomato paste, but I'm not sure what I'm going to use it in, that's okay. It's a good thing to have in your cupboard for when you do come across that time where you need some tomato paste. So
let me interject because I'm glad you brought that up. We're just going to talk about the non-perishables today in your pantry, but we have a whole nother kind of training piece that we teach our CSA members about freezer pantry, what does perishable pantry look like. So those are all other pieces that we do later on with our CSA members, but this is kind of a teaser for you to see the non-perishable piece.
Yeah, absolutely. So just having good basic things that you would be able to throw a meal together. So the first thing we're going to quick talk about are maybe like some meal fillers or some basic grains. We grabbed like rice and pasta out for you today. Those are easy things that you can use obviously for like a stir fry or a casserole, a quick skillet meal, or even some dry beans like beets. And we brought up, buying things in large quantities and small quantities depending on what your family needs. I do want to quick mention that when you're first getting started and you're not quite comfortable in the kitchen or just throwing together a meal, there's really no reason why you have to buy the more expensive item or the name brand item. You just need to start out with the most basic, and then as you get more familiar with what your family likes and what you tend to use more often, then you might buy or invest in larger quantities or in like bulk quantities of items.
Right.
For example, like I got these dry beans in bulk. They're a lot cheaper than buying a package because I know they're going to keep for a long period of time, and we're going to use a decent amount of beans in soups and salads and things like that. So I would highly recommend if you have like a store in your area that sells bulk items, even if it's in bulk bins where you can get as little or as much as you like, that's a good way to kind of get comfortable with some of the grains like rice, the beans, even like things like quinoa sometimes are still in bulk bins.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just want to say good morning to Miss Kimberly, who's joined us, Ron Myers, Miss Diane Rogers, Miss Cindy, and Miss Christy Alter. And one thing with the bulk, I know Mr. Bob Cini buys his stuff online, his beans online, right? Where would you guys get, is that like a local thing you try to buy beans, or is that online, or where would you find local bulk?
I don't Bob did the pan sauce show with us a few weeks ago. And Bob, I can't remember that website that you get your beans at off the top of my head, but we were going to reference a spice website when we get to the spices.
We'll talk about.
But absolutely, you can buy beans in bulk through online, and that might be a lot easier for you to do, just to do that from time to time through Amazon.
Absolutely, you can order them online. If you have like a Costco membership or a Sam's Club membership, you know that like canned tomatoes or canned beans are something that your family uses, or they're going to be good for years if you have a place to store them. Then sure, buy a case of 12 cans of tomatoes, because eventually you're probably going to go through them. If you're not so sure, you probably don't want to invest and buy cases of things yet.
Yeah.
Locally, if you're here in Toledo, I know there's a few places like Bassett's Health Food Store or Claudia's that has small like bulk bins. So that way you could just buy like $2 worth of bulk beans or $2 or $3 worth of brown rice if you're nervous about buying a large quantity. So that would kind of give you a little bit more control to kind of play around and see how that works.
If you like it, because not everybody likes the taste of some of those different grains.
Yeah, if you buy a pound of rice and you don't use it for a long time, and then that's probably not something you want to buy a big container of. But if you go through it fairly quickly and every family's different, then that would be a good place to put your food dollar next time.
I also want to mention too that you can also like cook a giant batch of rice or a giant pot of beans and then freeze them. So I mean, then you have that in your pantry stores for later. And that makes it even faster just to whip it out. So
There's one suggestion from Miss Diane Rogers that said about the Middle East market on Bancroft between Talmadge and Reynolds. Said they have some really inexpensive and good products.
Perfect.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so finding those little hot spots in your hometown or wherever you're from, and oftentimes the staff there is really knowledgeable and can kind of help you and maybe guide you and make some recommendations too. So don't be afraid to ask the staff there. They're usually little gems that are really helpful.
Right. Okay, so that's kind of the beans, rice, pasta.
Dry stock, good for obviously casseroles, stir fries, soups, lots of quick dishes to add some bulk to your meal, especially if you have a larger family.
Right.
The next area that we have is like our canned or our jarred items. And that could also be canned beans. I like to have dry beans if I know I'm going to cook a large batch, but I also like to have canned beans for that quick night or that last minute meal. If I know I just want to throw some chili together or throw some beans on a soup or make a stir fry or something where I just want to add a few beans, then I like to have a variety of beans in stock. So you could do things like black beans, kidney beans, garbanzo beans. A lot of times if something calls for black beans, I only have kidney, I might even swap one thing out for another. So again, as you get more comfortable with those substitutions, you can make them if you have to.
Yeah, not everybody knows that when they first start out cooking, that most beans are interchangeable. I know that was a big aha for me. So
yeah, most beans are interchangeable. And I don't want to say this across the board, but I was saying earlier, I'm not a baker because I view recipes sometimes more as like a basic guideline and not always like that's the way it has to be. So I tend to kind of play around with some substitutions when I have to. But canned beans are great things to have. And then packaged or jarred or canned tomato products. Tomato sauce, tomato paste. I usually always have canned diced tomatoes, a basic marinara sauce. Sure, I love the idea of always having a homemade one or like some frozen tomato products that I've made myself, but that doesn't always work out for those fast nights. So having some basic tomato sauces, to make maybe spaghetti, to make things like chili, to add some flavor to a sauce or some flavor to a meal. Those are things that are really inexpensive and really can be used in a large variety of recipes.
Yeah. Also, one fun thing about tomato paste, like I rarely run into a recipe that calls for an entire jar of this.
Yes.
And so usually it's only like a couple tablespoons, and then you're left with all this leftovers. And a tip that someone shared with me once was that whatever you have left over, just stick in some cellophane or into an ice cube tray and freeze it. And then you put it in a Ziploc bag, and then you've got that again in your freezer store. Yes. So it's a great way to use it all up.
I have found too, like over the years, especially learning from other CSA members, is that I wasn't using my freezer the way that I should. And that's really a way to maximize fresh food, or your nights where you are spending more time in the kitchen, is to freeze leftovers and freeze those little things to save you to save you money in the long run, and also time having things ready like that. So canned, jarred tomato products, those are things that are good for years. So when you see them on sale, it's a good thing to grab a few extra ones if you're able to.
And if you can, this is obviously not in a tin can, but you can also, this is some tomatoes that I made last year in a mason jar.
They're beautiful. They're pretty.
They are, right?
I like them out. They're pretty, yeah. So the other thing that I usually like to have around, salsa for fast things. I always throw some chicken in a crock pot with some salsa if I'm not sure, fajitas, fast shredded chicken, things like that. Other thing I usually have, and for those of you that have watched our videos before, you obviously know we are lovers of making our own broth when we can and having that ready.
That was a very popular video, by the way.
Yeah, but I also like to have some broth in my pantry if I'm out of broth, or if I'm in a hurry, I don't have time to grab it out. I always like to have some backup. Again, it's something that's good for a long period of time. I tend to have a beef, a chicken, and a veggie just because I like a variety of them, but whatever you tend to prefer, that's again something that's going to be good for a long time. So even if you do have your own most of the time to use, it's always good to have a little backup. I like the ones with the real resealable caps because I'm probably not going to use the whole thing, and that way I can throw it in the refrigerator, or if I'm not going to use it for a long time, I can freeze it.
Yep.
Miss Diane had a comment about the tomato paste. Said you can buy sometimes in a tube where there's no waste. Then
good to know.
I have seen that.
Good to know. So yeah, broths are going to be really good to cook with, have on hand if we need to. You can always freeze the leftovers.
And I like having some in cans too, because sometimes you don't need a whole
jar. So. Yeah, especially if you tend to not use it that often. Again, that's going to depend on, as you kind of explore and get more comfortable in your kitchen, you'll know what you might want to buy in larger amounts.
Right. Okay. Let's keep moving.
Yeah, keep moving. Next thing are things like oils, vinegars, sauces. That and spices, I'm going to say, is what really gives life to your food and really what makes your meal different than last night's meal, especially if you tend to be a skillet person or a sheet pan person, or however you tend to cook things. Changing up the oils, the vinegars, the flavors, the seasonings is really what's going to give it life. So you need to have, I'm going to say, at least one, if not a couple types of oil or fat in your kitchen. Something that you prefer to cook with, and then maybe something that you tend to use more for like salad dressings or on ready-to-eat food. It might be the same. If you're a huge lover of olive oil, maybe you tend to cook in olive oil, and you also tend to use that for like dressings and on top of your ready-to-eat foods. I use a lot of coconut oil for like a cooking fat. I know some people get nervous because it might have a slight coconutty taste. If you get one that says refined or ideal for cooking, that coconut taste is actually stripped away. So it won't have that coconut taste if that's something that you're worried about. But coconut oil, olive oil, a basic butter, I know that's technically not a pantry shelf-stable item, but something that you like to cook with. And then something maybe that you like to use on ready-to-eat foods. Mine is olive oil. Sometimes I also use that to cook with. Could be avocado oil. There's lots out there. But those are two that I like to have a backup of. You know, you never want to run out of the material that you tend to stir fry some veggies in or like cook something in really quickly. So some basic cooking fats.
Right, definitely.
Yeah.
And the vinegars, there's a whole slew of vinegars. Yeah, and I've got a lot of vinegars.
And this, if you're new, can be a little overwhelming because you're like, all these vinegars, you know, they range from a couple of dollars to like $20 a bottle. So it really just depends on, as you get more comfortable with cooking, what you tend to use the most of. Basic vinegars can not only be used for like salad dressings, like I like a good dark balsamic.
Yeah.
You know, that's a good fast thing you can add to not only like a green leafy salad, but even like a cold veggie salad. Also sauces or marinades a lot of times will call for like some sort of vinegar. It helps the flavor to kind of penetrate the meat or the protein a little bit better. So getting a little bit more comfortable with some of the vinegars. Again, that's not a place I would spend a lot of money until you kind of discover the taste and the flavor that you like a little bit more. So we've got basic vinegar, soy sauce, tamari sauce if you use those things. I like a good fast, like chicken fried rice or veggie fried rice. That's a fast, easy meal for us, especially if you have frozen rice in the freezer. You can grab that out. I mean, that's a meal that could be done in 15-20 minutes. So having things like that in your kitchen that are inexpensive, they're not going to go bad, is going to make those nights that much easier.
Okay.
So those are some basic sauces. We've got a few more on our freebie list, so stay tuned for that we'll talk about. And then we have some seasonings and spices and really all the fun stuff. And this is where I hope, if you're not comfortable and you are a part of Shared Legacies CSA, that you're really a lot more comfortable in this area, because it is a very cheap, cost-effective, like fantastic, nutrient-packed way to enhance your foods and your veggies. So spices, I would recommend trying to find a local place that sells them in small amounts or in bulk, so you can experiment a little bit more comfortably without really hurting your wallet. Again, I know those places that we mentioned before, like the local health food stores, tend to sell them in bulk, where you can just get 25 or 50 cents worth of a spice if you want. For example, this was like $1. This was almost $2. And that will pretty much fill up my jar of paprika. This is like a smoked paprika. This would probably cost like $4, I'm guessing, at the store. So finding a place that sells them in bulk, like this bulk turmeric was almost $2, is going to save you a lot of money and allow you to feel more comfortable experimenting with these spices. So basic things, salt and pepper. Obviously, you never want to run out of salt or pepper. I would be really sad if I ran out of pepper. So a basic salt, whatever you prefer, whether it's regular salt or sea salt. A basic pepper. I like fresh peppercorns, but I have both. I have ground up pepper if a recipe calls for a decent amount. I don't want to sit there grinding all the pepper. But fresh peppercorns are technically better for you. They actually have a component in the whole peppercorn called pepperin. That's really been shown to enhance nutrient delivery in your gut. Unfortunately, that component oxidizes very easily. So once you grind up pepper and let it set in a jar like this for several months, it's gone when it goes on your plate. So using fresh pepper when you can, especially when you are eating your ready-to-eat foods, is going to be a great thing for your gut and nutrient digestion.
I just think it tastes so much better. Like,
it
I
does.
feel like
it does.
My bachelor brother, he has this really simple apartment, hardly anything in his kitchen, and I'm like, dude, if you're just gonna get one thing for your kitchen, you get a pepper mill, because this will make a big difference in your meal. So. Big
difference. It tastes better for you. So salt and pepper are basic. And then we've got all these other ones, like turmeric, paprika, parsley, basil, crushed red pepper, ginger, garlic powder, thyme. And that's something that may build over time for you. It's not necessarily you going to the store and buying all these things at one time. So if you're new to spices, I would just try to grab 1 or 2 every time you go to the store, or find a bulk place that you can buy them.
Can I jump in real quick? Because you can also grow them yourself in a little plant, and then you
can
dehydrate them in a microwave in like a minute or two.
Did you do a video?
I did a video on that, on YouTube. So that's another really great way to not spend money. You buy a plant and then you just keep harvesting all summer. And
because sometimes over the summer you don't know what to do with all of it. You're like, I have too much of this.
For sure. So you use it all winter. It's nice.
So, and then once you buy spices like this, they don't go bad. They just start to lose their flavor and color. So you usually have about 6 to 9 months. Ideally, you're storing them away from light and heat, and that's going to preserve the shelf life a little bit. I don't know, I'm going to quick kind of show this. This is an old paprika that's probably like 6-9 months old, and this is a new paprika. I think you can see the difference in the color. So this paprika is not bad. It just might not taste as fresh or as strong as the fresh stuff.
I want to show you what you should not do. Do you see where my spice rack is? It's right above my oven. So when I'm boiling pasta, guess what's happening? I've got moisture going to my spice rack. So one of the suggestions that I got from Hellman, one of our CSA members, was to actually store, if you have room, to put your spices in your freezer, and that's one way to keep that from happening.
So you could put some of them in your freezer if you have extra, like if you do buy them in bulk and you want to store that in your freezer. It preserves the taste, it preserves the color. The only thing you might want to be careful of is if you take it out for a recipe and leave it out for a long period of time, there might be some condensation and then put it back in the freezer. So you just want to do that quickly, but storing them in the freezer is a really good tip. Yeah. So we've got seasoning spices, nuts and seeds. Again, buying a little bit, kind of playing around with them. You can crush them up, add them to salads. You can add them to stir fries. You can add them for a little bit of crunch to a sheet pan dinner. Pesto. Having a food processor allows you to make your own nut butters in small amounts. Those also get really expensive. So that's kind of a
sprinkle
good way.
On top of things.
Sprinkle on top of things. They add some good fibers, some good healthy fats. It's a really good healthy habit to have them around to snack on.
It's a good snack. I was just going to say that. That's the problem, is they disappear. My kids eat them. So you're buying those in bulk, it looks like. Is that a cheaper deal than getting, because this is so expensive at the store.
They are expensive. So nuts and seeds are expensive in general. So again, it's just going to be figuring out which ones you like to use. I do buy them in bulk. I don't know that they're that much cheaper. It's $7 for a pound.
It doesn't look cheaper.
So not cheaper. I mean, maybe depending on where you find them. You might be able to sign up for things like Amazon Pantry or Thrive Market and might be able to get some deals.
Or wait until they're on sale.
Wait till they're on sale, stock up.
And those are also good storing in the freezer as well.
Store in the freezer, store in the fridge. They are going to preserve. So the fats and nuts can oxidize and go bad very easily. So keeping them cold or in a dark place is going to be the ideal spot. Sugar, especially if you're a baker, I like to have some sort of granulated sugar on hand in addition to some sort of liquid sugar. So could be your plain regular like sugar beet sugar, could be coconut sugar, whatever granulated sugar you tend to like to have. That's something that doesn't go bad. And then I also like to have like a honey or a maple syrup or some sort of liquid sugar. You might have all of them, you might just have a couple. Sugar for me lasts a really long time, but I like to have a couple on hand for that moment when I do have a recipe that calls for a little bit. So just trying to have at least 2 options of sugar I think is a good basic rule. Unless you're a huge baker, then you're probably going to want to have some more specific things on hand. Next thing, just baking goods in general. And like I said, I'm not a huge baker, but I do have a basic flour, or I will even grind up almonds sometimes to make a basic almond flour to use for like a breading for chicken. But having some basic flour on hand. So not only if you don't bake cake or cookies, but you might want to quickly bread chicken or have some flour on hand for something.
Or
so
thicken up
something. So it is a good idea to have those things, even a little bit of baking powder and baking soda. Those things don't go bad. They're good for a long time, and you're going to be really disappointed if you pull up a random recipe and it has a half a teaspoon of baking soda and you don't have it on hand. So
it's a pretty key piece.
Always good to have those things just in case.
They do something in the chemistry of the food, so you got to have them.
Got a question from Miss Brenda Atzinger. She asked about nuts with chicken sheet pan meal or sesame seeds. She's making her first one tomorrow.
Oh, like her first sheet pan meal tomorrow? That's exciting.
So probably don't put them on right away.
Don't put them on. I would cook the meal first, and then, or even just like the last few minutes. You could sprinkle sesame seeds on top is a good one, or I like to crush up cashews sometimes. That's like a good little soft crunch you can add to a meal. You can sprinkle it on top, especially of like the chicken, if you're using chicken, sprinkling it over that.
Otherwise it'll burn. You don't want to stick it in right away.
I would definitely not have it on for the whole time. So just the last like 3-5 minutes if you want it to soften up a little bit, or just at the end after you take it out.
Another way to control the toasting of nuts is just to do it in a pan on the stove, and that way you can really smell it right away and control it. And then just sprinkle it on top after you've done it on the pan and know the difference. So.
And you do that with oil, or how do you do that?
Nuts you just put it dry in the pan.
Dry roast.
Super easy.
Okay.
Easy.
All right, thickeners. Let's finish up with that.
So that was another flour. Thickeners for if you do need a thickener for a gravy or a sauce or a soup, or if again you have a bacon where you need a thickener. Cornstarch is one that's going to be good forever in your cupboard. The other one that we have on our 2.0 list is arrowroot powder, which is a great gluten-free thickener that you can use that's clear. So it doesn't make the sauce or the gravy cloudy.
Yeah.
It's a totally clear thickener. So having some sort of thickener, again, you might not use it for months, but the one time you need it, it's good just to have it there so you can use a little bit. It's cheap and it's something that's not going to go bad.
Right.
So all good things. We've got some thickener, baking soda, baking powder. I also like to have a little bit of vanilla extract in my cupboard for those random needs. But so those are all of our basic staple things.
List.
Yeah, it is a big list.
And if you want, we put this together in a cheat sheet for you. So if you want to grab that, it's at sharedlegacyfarms.com/pantry, and you'll be able to download that. There's a 1.0 list, and then there's a kind of a short 2.0 list. I'm going to add to that eventually later as we build this part of our training element in our course. But yeah, you can at least get the
basics,
yep.
and start checking things off while you're at the store.
So let's start making.
Throw a
we
meal
want to
together.
kind of show an example. Let's clear this off, and now we want to show you how we do this. So when we were planning this video, I said, Katie, we actually need that.
Okay.
I said we should make something and show them that how easy this is. And so we sat there for like 30 seconds, right? It actually wasn't that long. We're like, well, what could we do? What's a good template meal to just demonstrate, this poof, like boom kind of concept where you just throw things together. And we said, skillet meal is a great example of how this works. So we are going to make a basic pasta skillet meal, and we're just kind of going to randomly throw things that I pulled out of my pantry and my refrigerator. So
all staple items for the most part.
Yeah, for the most part. So do you want to start chopping?
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
knife is right behind you, and you can start chopping. We're going to put in an onion, a chopped up onion, and we're going to chop up probably 2 cloves of garlic. You can smash those. Oh, Kurt, this is when I need my husband.
You got it.
Oh,
yes.
that's so close. What if that hadn't
I've been
worked?
practicing.
So what we're first going to do, let's do with the olive oil. Should you put that?
Oh, it's right on the table.
All right.
Sorry.
So she's going to start. You want to talk a little bit about the formula concept and just how you have a gist of what you think how the meal should go, and
So for a skillet meal, I guess it depends on what we're using, but obviously she's going to use some cooking oil, whatever oil she has on hand. And depending on what you're using, you're probably going to start with your protein because that's going to take a decent amount of time to cook. So whether you're using sausage or chicken, we're using sausage today, right?
Yep. This is something I pulled out of my freezer.
So I would tend to use that first. That way we can make sure it cooks all the way through.
I'm going to chop this over here while you guys do that. So this will probably take about 10 minutes, I'm guessing.
And this is one that your whole family loves, right?
My family loves this.
Okay.
Yes.
So probably throw our basic protein in there, whatever we're going to do. Maybe some garlic, some onions, and then whatever.
Yep, we're going to put in some beans, some roasted red peppers as a fun little, that's kind of my umami, well, it's not umami, but that's my flavor enhancer. This is actually, I think, pre-cooked sausage, so we don't even have to worry
about cooking it too long.
It's probably got a ton of nitrates in it, so it's probably not the best example from an organic farmer, but this is...
I love your honesty.
Yeah, this is what we do when we have to throw a meal together in the summertime. It's funny because as farmers, we often really struggle to eat in the summer because we are just so busy
feeding everyone else.
Feeding everyone else and trying to find space for this. So this looks like it's good. When you're ready, you can throw those in there.
Okay.
Perfect. So we're throwing in. I'm just throwing in the sausage. While she's doing the onions, she's going to also crush a couple of garlics. Actually, why don't you mince them? Let's not crush them. Mince them. And then I've got this massive jar of roasted red peppers. This is one of my favorite things in the pantry. I have it on the 2.0 list, but it would be on my 1.0 list. I use this so much. This is way too much, so I'm going to use about half of it for this meal, and then we'll probably save the rest of it. I can probably just freeze it, right?
You can freeze them, yeah.
Once you don't
just
use the entire jar, just seal them up and
seal them up. And
this has this gorgeous color.
Gorgeous.
Gorgeous color, so much flavor, and so healthy for you, right?
Yeah, and you can easily make these. We're going to do a whole tutorial on how to roast your own peppers. when they come out of your ears in the summertime, because this is a great staple to set away yourself if you garden it all. That's probably enough. I took about half of it.
That's my eyes.
We should have brought your new knife, and we could both be chopping. What was I thinking?
No, and I was like, I don't need to bring
So I'm
that.
going to have to use this knife. This is a little slippery, so you want to be careful. Now, meanwhile, back here, our onions and our sausage are cooking. And I love this meal because it's really fast. I can get it done in 15 or 20 minutes. And a lot of times I'll make a little quick Alfredo sauce with some garlic in it. And then I'll pour it over it, and it really, we don't have time to make that sauce today on the show because we're already going over. But
I'm gonna steal this.
yeah, totally. So you just added a couple of
Cloves of garlic,
Cloves
an
of garlic.
onion. So like she said, we're using sausage that's already cooked, so this is gonna even speed it up faster.
Yeah.
This is one that I would even, when you cook things like chicken or if you cook things ahead of time, you can even throw some pre-cooked protein,
Yeah.
already cooked chicken in here, and you're basically just reheating it. So you
So
can sub out some things
We
if you
chose
needed to.
we chose to use sausage, but you could very easily use any other protein that you wanted. And then it immediately changes the whole flavor.
So
That
this,
might even be enough. I don't think I even need those
Okay.
two. So I'm gonna just use my hands. We're gonna add those in. And then we need to open those kidney beans. This is when you need a dish towel, right? So, she's gonna get those going. Yep. We didn't practice this part, can you tell?
Juggling kitchen utensils.
yeah.
Too many cooks in the
Is that
kitchen,
gonna be a
baby.
show one of these days? A Facebook Live juggling or
Oh,
juggling
yeah.
kitchen utensils?
Kurt, come take a look at what this looks like. This is really pretty. You could just eat this right now. So what we're going to do at the very end is we're going to just throw the pre-cooked pasta. I cooked some pasta before the show today. And we'll just throw that in there, and it's going to be really yummy. And then I've got some, gosh, what kind of cheese is this? This is from Canal Junction, one of our partners, Flat Rock style. So I always like to use freshly grated cheese. Because the stuff that you buy at the store is pre-shredded
And
it's
yeah.
caked with some cellulose.
Sponge.
Yeah, cellulose. I feel like you don't realize this until you start grating your own
Reading
cheese.
labels.
And then you're like, what is on this shredded cheese?
Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely a good staple for the refrigerator is some sort of hard cheese that's going to last for a long time that you can grate up as you need it.
And you can store this in the freezer. I have stuff from last summer's CSA still in my freezer. I think I have 5 of these left. And I'll give you one.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Exciting.
And then I just pulled it out. You know, it's awesome.
So, like, for example, we've got these roasted red peppers. We've got this protein. We're going to add these.
Did you rinse it, Seth? I like to
No, I
rinse it.
didn't. Sorry.
I always like to rinse the beans.
We have 1 can of beans. Like if you though were trying to, maybe if you were short on protein, you could always add another can of beans, right? I mean, you could kind of fill this meal up a little bit more if you had to.
Oh yeah, there we go. And then we're gonna add some
Super
salt. Now, Kurt, don't say anything, but I always tell you to put salt.
It needs more salt.
More
Needs
salt,
more
more salt.
No.
All right, and then we're kind of getting close. So this just really needs to heat up, right? So then I just have some fresh spinach from our garden, and we're gonna throw that in here too.
Awesome.
And that'll take about a minute to wilt down. I don't even take the stems off.
I don't either.
I mean, I did
So-
wash it.
You're using spinach, but we could also throw like kale in
Kale?
here. If we
I
had
use
kale,
kale.
whatever green.
Chard.
Chard would work, beet greens
Yeah.
would work,
Beet
arugula.
And if would be a great, skillet meals are a great way to introduce your family to cooked greens. So if that looked like a lot of spinach to you, it's actually not once it wilts down. Ooh, sorry. I'm dropping spinach.
Oh, I just want to eat it, but I don't want to do that on camera, but I would.
But it's going to wilt down. So you're actually going to, you can get your family to eat a lot of greens when they're cooked, I feel like.
Yeah.
I'm not doing a very good job of stirring
That's
this.
right. So I think we can even throw the pasta in.
Sure, it'll wait down the.
I'm trying to see if this is going to be hot.
So you cook the fast protein and the onions, oil, and garlic for roughly 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes
If
beforehand?
that, yeah. Yep. So if you knew that you had like a few rushed nights ahead of you, if this were me, you could use the pre-cooked sausage. You could also cook like some chicken breasts in a crock pot on a Sunday, just like plain, have them in the refrigerator, and that way on Wednesday night when you come home after practice or whatever you've been running around doing, you could throw this meal together, done, ready, 15 minutes. You could cook the pasta ahead of time, right? You could just cook it on Saturday and Sunday, have it in the refrigerator. We could pull out rice from the freezer if we had rice in the freezer. So this is a great kind of fast way that you're able to throw a good, healthy meal together.
Yep.
Probably just as long as you would have sat in like the Chick-fil-A drive-thru.
Yeah,
right?
no, I'm curious, like for those of you who are watching, especially like Diane, I want to get inside your head because I know you're a good chef. So, what spices would you put in here right now besides salt? Do you have any suggestions? Because a lot of times I feel like spices can really change the whole meal. I mean, it can one
make
day
it more themed.
Yeah,
I feel like.
exactly. So
Yeah,
it could be the same ingredients but a different spice, and all of a sudden it's a totally different concept. So if you have suggestions for how we should spice this, you can throw them at us before we end the show. Like I said, I usually make an Alfredo sauce that I pour over this, and that really kind of jazzes it up big time. But you could also just eat it like this.
Yeah.
And then
I know it's
beautiful. And if this, you want to come get this is sort of our final. We got to throw this cheese on it. That's the last step, but it's super pretty. And then, you can even freeze it if you don't eat it all.
You can freeze it if you don't eat it all.
As a
You can
leftover.
bring it for lunch tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm all about making. If you're spending time making dinner, you should have some leftover. Hopefully, for lunch the next day.
That's totally good.
So yeah, great way
salt?
to incorporate cook.
No more salt, honey. I am going to add some cheese though. And I would use like a hard cheese, a Parmesan, or would add a little more, salty. So, and that's it, folks.
Beautiful. So easy.
So yum. So there's an example of how we just whip some stuff out from our pantry.
That was like under 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's that. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yum. So, hope that was fun for you. Again, we have a few reminders here at the end. If you want to get our freebie, go to sharedlegacyfarms.com/pantry and you'll get a list of our recommended pantry items for dry perishable goods that you should have. If you want to join our CSA and get really good, well, first of all, really great vegetables, top-notch ingredients, but also really good training on how to use them. We are now taking signups for that. We have about 50 shares left. And you can check us out at sharedlegacyfarms.com/sign-up or just sharedlegacyfarms.com if you just want to see our website. And then again, we also have that Facebook group if you want to figure out if CSA might be a good fit for you. Come into that group for the next 30 days and just listen in, watch our videos, ask your questions, and that'll help you decide. And you can find that at facebook.com/groups/exploring CSA. We've got about 120 people in there.
Wow, so many.
Yeah, so it's kind of a lively group. So that's it. Do you have any final tips, words of encouragement?
Just one or two items added to your cart each week. I mean, I don't think it needs to be like a huge trip to the grocery store. So if you've never bought dry beans before, buy a little bit of dry beans. If you've never bought balsamic vinegar before, find one that's on sale and throw it in your cart. I mean, you can definitely experiment and get comfortable. These things don't go bad quickly, so don't get discouraged or feel rushed or panicked like you have to use them up.
And I would say too that if you're kind of a new cook, just start out by, you're like, there's another Tex-Mex recipe that has cumin in it. I guess cumin is a Tex-Mex spice. You know, you kind of start learning things like that. And that goes a long way.
And the day you look up a recipe and you have all the ingredients is going to be like the most exciting
I know.
thing. You're going to be like, oh my gosh, I have all these. So just get in the kitchen. That's all I can say is that no one was born a cook. People tell me all the time, but I can't cook. I'm like, you're not going to wake up one morning and be able to cook.
You practice.
You have to get better at it. You just have to get more comfortable in the kitchen.
And you have to make mistakes, right? I think
everyone makes mistakes because otherwise, that's how you learn. I mean, you're going to have to make mistakes.
Yeah. Well, good luck in your cooking adventure, and I want to challenge you to try and make a meal tonight using some stuff in your pantry and see how you do. All right, have a great one, guys.
Bye.